Squeeze out overview and implications. Understanding the legal concept in corporate finance. Presentation overview. Definition of squeeze out. Squeeze out is a process by which majority shareholders can force minority shareholders to sell their shares in a company. It is typically done to gain complete control of the company and eliminate minority shareholders. How squeeze out works. Squeeze out typically involves a majority shareholder offering minority shareholders a price per share that is higher than the current market price. The minority shareholders can either accept the offer or be forced to sell their shares. Legal requirements for squeeze out. There are legal requirements that must be met for squeeze out to occur, including obtaining approval from regulatory authorities and ensuring that minority shareholders are fairly compensated for their shares. Ethical considerations of squeeze out. Squeeze out can be controversial as it results in the elimination of minority shareholders and the loss of their investments. It is important to consider the ethical implications of squeeze out and ensure that all stakeholders are treated fairly. Understanding squeeze out. Squeeze out is a process by which majority shareholders in a company can force minority shareholders to sell their shares. This is done to gain full control of the company and remove minority shareholders from the equation. What is squeeze out? Squeeze out is a mechanism used in corporate finance whereby majority shareholders forcibly buy out minority shareholders to gain full control of the company. How does squeeze out work? Threshold for squeeze out. Squeeze out typically requires the purchase of a set number of shares, such as 90% of the outstanding shares of a company, before the majority shareholder can force the minority shareholders to sell their shares at a fair price. Forcing minority shareholders to sell. Once the majority shareholder has acquired the required threshold for squeeze out, it can force the remaining minority shareholders to sell their shares at a fair price, determined by an independent appraiser. Legal and ethical implications. Legal requirements. There are several legal requirements that must be met for squeeze out to occur, including the percentage of shares required for approval, the valuation of shares, and the notice period for minority shareholders. Ethical implications. Squeeze out can have significant ethical implications, particularly in terms of minority shareholder rights and the impact on the wider community. It is important to consider these implications and ensure that the interests of all stakeholders are taken into account. Legal requirements. Purchase of set percentage of shares. In order for squeeze out to occur, the majority shareholder must purchase a set percentage of shares in the company. Use of independent appraiser. Another legal requirement for squeeze out is the use of an independent appraiser to determine the fair price of the shares being purchased from minority shareholders. Legal action against majority shareholder. Failure to meet legal requirements for squeeze out can result in legal action against the majority shareholder. Ethical considerations. Squeeze out raises ethical concerns regarding the fairness of the price offered to minority shareholders, the impact on employees and communities, and the overall morality of the action. Conclusion. Squeeze out mechanism. Squeeze out is a legal mechanism that allows majority shareholders to gain full control of a company by forcing minority shareholders to sell their shares. While it can be an effective way for majority shareholders to gain control, it is important to consider the impact on minority shareholders, employees, and communities. Legal and ethical implications. Squeeze out can have significant legal and ethical implications, especially when it comes to protecting the rights of minority shareholders. It is important to consider the impact on employees and communities as well. Thank you.